In April 1998, Australia's waterfront became the scene of one of the most dramatic industrial confrontations in the nation's history. Security guards in black uniforms moved through darkened shipping terminals before dawn. Hundreds of workers arrived for their shifts only to find locked gates, chains, and termination notices waiting for them. It looked less like an industrial dispute and more like a military operation. The events that unfolded during the 1998 Waterfront Dispute would divide the country, topple careers, trigger court battles, and reshape Australia's ports forever. To understand why, we need to step back to the docks themselves. For more than a century, Australia's waterfront was the gateway to the nation. Almost every imported car, television, refrigerator, and container of goods passed through ports in cities such as Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Fremantle, and Adelaide. By the 1990s, critics argued Australia's waterfront was among the least productive in the developed world. Ships often waited longer to unload. Labour costs were high. Businesses complained that inefficiency at the ports was making Australian exports less competitive. The newly elected federal government, led by Prime Minister John Howard, was determined to change that. At the centre of the conflict stood the Maritime Union of Australia, led by John Coombs. The union represented thousands of dock workers and had a reputation for being one of Australia's strongest industrial organisations. Meanwhile, transport company Patrick Corporation, headed by Chris Corrigan, was preparing for showdown. Behind closed doors, plans were being developed to replace union labour with a newly trained workforce. One of the strangest chapters unfolded far from Australia's ports. In 1997, groups of recruits were secretly trained in the Middle East by former military personnel. The training took place in Dubai and quickly became one of the most controversial elements of the dispute. Critics accused organisers of attempting to build an alternative workforce ready to take over Australia's docks. Then came the decisive moment. On the night of the 7th of April, 1998, and into the early hours of the 8th of April, security teams moved into Patrick terminals across Australia. Floodlights illuminated container yards. Chains rattled against steel gates. Workers arriving before sunrise found themselves locked out. More than 1,400 waterfront workers were dismissed. Television crews rushed to the ports. Images of shocked workers standing outside fences dominated national news bulletins. Within hours, picket lines formed. At Melbourne's Webb Dock and other ports around the country, thousands of supporters gathered. Union members, families, students, church groups, and politicians joined the protests. The atmosphere swung between festival and confrontation. Barbecues smoked beside shipping containers. Protest songs echoed across the docks. Yet tension was never far away as police monitored crowds and court battles intensified. What followed became a legal war. The Maritime Union challenged the dismissals in the federal court. In a dramatic series of rulings, courts found that the restructuring used to terminate workers had been designed to remove the union workforce unlawfully. On the 6th of May, 1998, the High Court effectively cleared the way for workers to return. Scenes of celebration erupted around the country. Workers marched back through gates they had been barred from entering only weeks earlier. But the dispute was not truly over. Months of negotiations followed before a settlement was reached. Significant workplace reforms were introduced, changing how Australia's ports operated. The Waterfront Dispute left a lasting mark on Australia. It accelerated changes in productivity across the nation's ports while becoming a defining test of union power, corporate strategy, and government intervention. Nearly 3 decades later, the images remain unforgettable. Locked gates at dawn, crowds lining the docks, and a nation arguing over who controlled the gateway to Australia. The containers have long since moved on, but the battle fought beside them continues to shape debates about work, power, and industrial relations today. And perhaps that is the real legacy of the Waterfront Dispute. It was never just about ships or cargo. It was about who gets to decide the future of work in Australia. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more forgotten, unusual, and fascinating chapters of Australian history, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. New videos are released regularly, exploring the places, people and events that helped shape Australia, often hiding in plain sight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.